Good evening, everyone. And if you can see from the slide is talking about complementary relationships. And I'd like to actually give a big thank you to our previous presenter, Aaron, and actually gave a very, very good overview of what exactly is enterprise architecture. I think from the first slide, or maybe the second slide that Aaron has presented, I could actually deeply get involved because I've been in the IT industry since the 1980s. So whatever problem that Aaron has mentioned, there's a few slides on the railroad that doesn't link, and that was what I was experiencing. So I think what we are going to do right now is to put into the context of business analysis and project management, how these two other critical job functions could work very closely together with enterprise architecture to make project a better success. So let's take a look at this next slide over here. If you can see, there's actually three roles actually bundled all together. And I think the heading for this particular slide has highlighted that these are three critical job functions, isn't it? People who are in the EA, you realize you have solution architect, you have business architecture architects, you have data application architects. There are so many different kinds of architects. So do they actually hold sort of the skills of a BA, PM, or are they actually dedicated roles? And that's what we are going to talk about. Okay, and discuss. And if you can see from the screen, what I have actually done is to capture some useful and important information that was in his slide, from Aaron's slide. And you can see from Aaron's slides, he talks about planning. He also talked about business needs, what the business really needs to have to address their problems, their opportunities. And he also talked about strategy planning and talk about prioritizing what is important to the business. And more importantly, he also want to check, do we have the capability or we don't have the capability to do something within the organization? Okay, what else? And I think he also talked about, we want to know where we are. We want to know where we are going in future and what are the gaps. And a couple of slides back here also shown to us, we need to understand the gaps in various areas. So the next item you talk about as well, which is very closely linked to strategies, talking about goals. What else? We're talking about justifying why do we need certain investment, and that we need a business case, isn't it? And I think a very important keyword to me is, what is the value do you have by doing enterprise architecture? What is the value that you have, for example, from a different perspective of different key stakeholders? So for example, from a to actually ask ourselves, what is the role of BA in the whole context of enterprise analysis? So if you take a look at the definitions of business analysis, it is actually the practice of enabling change within an organization by defining the needs and recommend solutions that deliver value. So if you can see, what Aaron has presented actually fits in very well the role of a BA, isn't it? So exactly what a BA do is to understand what change we need. Okay, and I think this is a definition from IBA, which is actually from International Institute of Business Analysis, has summarized it very, very well. And I think it's also important. In many organizations, they tend to focus only on the needs and the problems and not on opportunities, especially when you talk to many IT professionals who are very technical. They will only say, I'm going to solve the problem. I'm going to address the needs of my stakeholders. But do they really talk about opportunities? May not be. So I thought this will be important. And I think what Aaron has highlighted is very well as well. We need to look at the opportunities the organization is looking at. And the next slide, we have simply wanted to look at what the project management role when talking about implementing solutions for enterprise architecture. So if you can see, this is a definition from IPMA, application of methods, tools, techniques, and competency to achieve your goals, which I thought is actually really a needed skills, okay, to support the implementation of all the solutions defined by EA. Okay, and what about all this again, to reiterate, is actually just to highlight again, all these really have to work hand in hand together, the three critical roles, okay, EA, BA, and also project management. Okay, I'd like you to take a look at this particular slide. This particular slide talks about business analysis in 5 perspectives. The International Institute of Business Analysis, in short we call it IIBA, have been their recent release of BA BOK. And I think for Aaron, you have the ITA BOK, right? And over here, we have the BA BOK, which is Business Analysis Body of Knowledge. They have actually summarized 5 different perspectives where BA actually would need to get involved in many organizations. So they may actually analyze the business in the context or perform business analysis work in the context of agile project. Okay, business intelligence project, IT projects, business architecture, and business process improvement. So I would like probably Aaron, from being an expert in enterprise architecture, to share with us a bit of insights. What does the word business architecture means in the world of enterprise architecture? Aaron, please.
Yeah, okay, I think business architecture is the key because the just now mentioned that there are other domain of enterprise architecture. They got data architecture, application architecture, infrastructure architecture. So business architecture is the prerequisite. So if you have not defined your business, you can't do the rest of the architecture. That's why in many situations is that I've encountered that many of the organizations, they buy the solution first and after that they approach the business. Actually, it's wrong. We need to understand the business first. Then from there, we understand the gaps that exist in our business and treat that as an opportunity and look at the data area and then application area and also technology area. Then from there, we look at the exactly which vendor that can best suit filling up the gap of the business. So this is the right way. But today, in many instances, is that organization, they go straight away, talk to the vendor, and the vendor will tell you that their baby is the cutest baby in the whole world. Other baby are ugly. So buy their baby and they can give you a discount and etc. But actually, the fit to the business is, you don't know. You have no clue because you have not done the business architecture yet. So I think that is the context, perspective that are very, very important in this area.
Okay, thank you, Aaron, for your key insights about what is really enterprise architecture. And this is exactly what the BA BOK published by IBA has highlighted. Business architecture actually supports business transformation. They address the concern or key stakeholder concern. For example, what I mentioned, shareholder or the C-level by the middle management. Okay, why are there so many problems within the organization? And if you can see from what Aaron has highlighted to us, that business architecture is key. It's a prerequisite. So in that case, the other areas, if you notice, business intelligence supports the data application, IT supports this application and the technology area, and business process management actually support the processes in the whole enterprise architecture. And what exactly is Agile then? For some of you who are in the IT industry or non-IT as well, Agile, in fact, is one of the buzzwords you hear very often right now. For example, I want to do a project in an Agile way. We want to have agility. So in this perspective of what IIBA has written, they actually have addressed, if you are a BA in the running projects in the Agile way, how are you going to approach business analysis from the perspective of Agile? Okay, if you're running a project from a business architecture perspective, they will advise you, for example, in the whole 5 perspective, they will actually give you some insight. What are you going to do? What kind of knowledge, skills, experience do you need? Okay, what kind of outcome or expectation out from the 5 perspective? And you will have a very unique pair of lenses. Okay, the pair of glasses that you wear. When I'm doing projects in the agile way, in agile context, BIIT, business architecture, or for example, business process management, usually what kind of problem they'll be facing, what kind of needs they'll be looking at, and what kind of opportunities they'll be looking at. So in that case, it will help, for example, to complement the EA portion. When I'm doing a business architecture or the 4 other perspectives, I will be able to know, address, and look at how to analyze the architecture or how to analyze the business from these 5 perspectives, which I thought IBA has actually written in the context of these 5 different perspectives very well. Okay, where it is not inside the prior version of BA BOK. And then let's take a look then at a project management. What is the role of project management in, let's say, in the 5 perspective or even in EA, for example? So you realize from what Aaron has mentioned, project management actually helps to do the execution portion, do the planning portion. And if you notice, we actually have on the screen called Agile. However, typically in projects, we can run it in a waterfall, agile, or hybrid way. So waterfall, in another context, some organization call it plan-driven, meaning you really have to plan to know exactly how you're going to run the projects. So what about for projects like enterprise architecture projects? Do you need to run in which kind of life cycle, waterfall, agile, or hybrid? It is often a combination of all three. Some projects can be run typically right waterfall. Some projects is usually it's more effective to run it in an agile way, and some probably a combination of both waterfall and in an agile manner. Based on what I see, for example, for a software application, depending on the nature, it could also run in waterfall. It can run in an agile and hybrid. And for my personal experience, many projects are run in a hybrid way. What about data projects? As you can see, you've got data application. It is probably more effective that if you want, you can run in an agile or even a hybrid way to do in different iterations, okay, to get more regular review whether you're on the right track. Okay, that applies to the rest of the 5 perspective as well, or the other aspect of enterprise architecture project, or the different aspect on them. So let's take a look at the next slide. And this is actually a slide that actually I took from Aaron. And why do I want to use this slide? Basically, I'm going to just share a couple of information here. So if you can see from here, this is talking about strategy. And this is actually in a BA box is talking about before the project even gets started, before the project actually have a business case, before the project is being approved. So the BA role would actually wants to do a strategic planning, or what we call strategic analysis, by defining what is our current state, future state, what are the gaps, and what kind of possible solution we can have. So that fits in very, very closely to EA, isn't it? What about all these goals? And I think it's quite closely related to strategy. Okay, likewise, if you notice, risk is not just in project management. In business analysis, we also have to look at the business risk. What kind of business risk the organization is facing? For example, we can't afford the core banking to be down, isn't it? What about here? Plan project meet our criteria. So before you even have to run the project, you must define the criteria. So a BA role come in very nicely to fit into this area. Okay, or the skills of a BA would come in very handy. What about the next one here? What is the impact of making a change and dependency? So in that case, you will probably need some BA skills, okay, to do an impact analysis and understand where are the dependency and which application should get replaced. So again, a BA role could actually do some analysis, okay, and understand the impact of not even doing anything, what will happen, okay, and what are the risks involved as well, and when should they get replacement, look at some vendor sort of assessment, okay, look at when they should sunset the solution, for example. Okay, what about this one here? This is talking about capabilities. In the entire BA box, they have one topic that they actually cover is business capability analysis, understanding what the business can do or cannot do. Yeah, and it's one of the techniques they have actually emphasized in the BA box. Okay, what about here? Which application are at risk and end of life, or we call sunset, isn't it? So this, in fact, from a analysis perspective, you could actually do some cost benefit analysis. You could show do some ROI investment. You could also do some analysis. What happens if you do not do anything? What would be actually the application could cost in terms of maintenance, for example, right? The people maintaining the system. Okay, what about the next three area here? Capabilities we have mentioned earlier on. Okay, there's 3 of them here, which I have just clicked on the last 3 button, is in the BA box, or probably now it has been a very, very common model called business model canvas. So you actually can use business model canvas to actually look at how are you going to create value, what kind of channels or what kind of partners, what kind of activities you would like to actually create to actually get value from the customers, or what the customer can actually give it back to you. So all this, you realize that actually blending very well, because all this as well, the project manager have to make sure all these are in place and run according to plan. Okay, so what are all these next slide here talking about is what kind of skill set and mindset supports enterprise architecture. If you can see, take a look on the screen, the business knowledge and organization knowledge is in line with what Aaron has mentioned. Business architecture is the prerequisite. So if you can imagine an architect does not have business knowledge, organization knowledge, how can he or she understand what the business is talking about? Like what Aaron has mentioned, when you first begin as a programmer, and that's where I went through, I will actually have problem talking to the business because I do not understand those business vocabulary, business glossary, for example. Okay, what about system thinking? What is conceptual thinking? Okay, in fact, I do from my past experience as well, and we've reading through lots of article, we realize that people skills, or what you call interaction skills, are extremely important in the context of enterprise architecture or business architecture. Okay, and if you see from the screen, these three items in black actually has sort of highlighted that when you are doing more strategy work, things that are in multiple years, you have to consider about uncertainty, making a lot of adaptation and making changes, especially the world is changing so fast. So what exactly is system thinking? What exactly is conceptual thinking? Oh, let's take a look. Okay, system thinking, if you can see from the screen, it is actually have a 4 keywords I've highlighted in bold. People, process, technology, and holistic point of view. I believe you have heard Aaron's speech. You could actually have appreciate what he's going through or highlight why people, process, and technology looking at overall view would be important. I am very sure, for example, if you're going to a third world country, you would not also want to consider the people, the skill level, what kind of processes they have, and what kind of technology they can afford or is in place in that country. Yeah, when they're doing enterprise architecture. Okay, so what is then conceptual thinking? Conceptual thinking, if you can see from the screen, it actually talks about usually for all the architects at enterprise architecture, you will actually receive or actually have to assimilate lots and large, huge amount of data stored everywhere, and that will get worse if you are doing a global projects. Okay, with multiple locations in different regions, and how to connect all this information that are important. And that is an important skill set that you need to have when you are doing architectural work, when you're doing business analysis work. And all these will need to link up, for example, like in what context you are in, okay, what kind of needs the stakeholder would like to have, what kind of solution, what kind of change, for example, what kind of, who are the stakeholders involved, and not only that, you want to look at what value do you have to provide them at the end when you provide the solution or implement the solution. Okay, so over here is actually talking about the collaboration between BA, EA, and PM. So do you think a EA can be a dedicated role, or do you think currently they are actually holding a hybrid role, meaning they're also playing the role of BA and PM? In some organization, surprisingly, they don't have BA role. It is embedded, okay, in PM or EA. So I'm not surprised maybe to see that a lot of organizations right now is actually having a hybrid role, especially holding EA and PM together, okay, or PM and BA together as one role. Okay, what about here? If you notice, we have 3 different kind of role: strategic BA, business BA, and IT BA. So for example, for strategic BA will be people doing all the strategy. Business BA will be extremely useful. You got business knowledge and you work at the front end for business architecture. IT BA will be more on people doing, for example, application and data application and technology aspect. And that because they actually have understanding of the technical infrastructure of technology viewpoint. Okay, what kind of deliverables you think you need to create? So this bring me to the next question. We probably wanted to have a clear roles and responsibility and what kind of deliverables you need to create for the entire EA project. Yep. What about the goals, objective? Are they the same or different? I think the end goal is the same. It's only that if you're playing different role, a BA, EA, and PM, okay, your objective may be different. For example, a BA would focus on, does the solution address the needs of the stakeholder, of the organization? A PM will want to make sure to lead and manage the team to achieve the project objective. Okay, and what about the EA? EA really wanted to have an overview of the organization, architect them, and provide business value. So does it mean that BA and PM doesn't provide value? Not really. Whatever they do, the three different role or the critical function, they are all providing value to the organization. And this is something similar among all the three different roles. Okay, and this particular slide is actually an extract of the business architecture. So you can see on the right-hand side, from Aaron's speech, you notice he also used the word blueprint. So these are some of the blueprints that's actually quite commonly being used as a key deliverables or output at the end of the project or throughout the EA. They would like to actually show, like, especially I think for dashboard, it's a very, very common blueprints. Yep. And not only that, I think processes, organization, especially if your organization have multiple locations across the globe, this is extremely important. And I think Aaron has emphasized quite a fair bit on capability. So the capability map will be extremely useful. Okay, what about balanced scorecard? I think balanced scorecard will be a good way to see in the 4 different aspects. Okay, learning, internal processes, okay, financial as well as customer satisfaction. Have we actually achieved what we want after doing all this work? Okay, and I think value stream as well, talking about end-to-end process, does it provide value? Okay, so what you can see is these are some of the key blueprints that organizations are looking at.